Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. You are now listening to season 7 of the show. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Sally Davis. Sally is a senior partner in the construction disputes team at Mayer Brown in London. She serves on the firm's global management committee and is the co-leader of the construction and engineering professional indemnity team. Sally is a highly skilled litigator with experience in litigation, arbitration, mediation, and construction industry disputes. One of Sally's most notable cases proceeded to the House of Lords and is now precedent on the law of damages. Sally was Mayer Brown's first female managing partner in the London office and was named in the London Super Lawyer 2014 Top 50 Women list. So, a very warm welcome, Sally.
Thank you very much, Rob. Wow, that was quite an introduction. I'd forgotten about most of those things, but thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Well, all thoroughly well deserved. And I've been watching your career for many years and very, very successful. And before we talk through that and all of your projects and experiences, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
I have indeed seen it. And yeah, that's a brilliant question. I do love it. I have been thinking about this. I would want it to be closer to 10, but sadly, based on my own career and life at Mayer Brown, I think it's probably nearer a 3. But I like to pretend, although again, it's not really reality, because I don't live in a house like that. But I think the split is closer to law firm life. In terms of walking over bridges, clippity-clopping pre-pandemic around London, not the offices and not such diversity in their office environment. But I do like the split and it's British.
Well, with that, we will accept your vote and move swiftly on to talk all about you. So would you mind, Sally, telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Yes, of course. So my background and career journey is that there was nobody in my family at all who was in a legal background or had a legal background. My mother was a teacher. My dad was an engineer. And I think my interest in law really came, funnily enough, from TV programs. So I'm very old and I used to watch a program, which I don't know whether you've ever heard of it, but called Crown Court. And it was a courtroom drama and I absolutely loved it. I then became obsessed with any and all other legal dramas, documentaries, anything from Judge Judy, which has been around a very long time, to Inspector Morse, anything with a sort of legal courtroom element. I was also pretty rubbish at school at anything to do with sciences. I was good at English and I was not bad at languages, but I was lacking in creativity. I was worried about journalism because I thought it was too competitive. So law seemed to be something that suited me in terms of it was an unknown. I didn't do law A level, but I'd always been fascinated by crime and the criminal process, not civil law at all. That was a sort of happy accident. But yeah, I was thoroughly encouraged by my parents to believe in myself and do anything that I wanted to do. I came from a pretty diverse background. My mother was from Chile. And so that was very interesting, being born and brought up in Shropshire with a Chilean mother and an older sister and then a younger sister. So yeah, no legal background, but I did used to go and sit in the magistrate's court in Shrewsbury and watch what happened and shadowed local solicitors whenever I can. But I would say I became obsessed with criminal law and criminal lawyers. And I did probably think in a rather arrogant way that I was going to save the world and get people released from death row and, do all sorts of wonderful things in the criminal context. But that's how I ended up doing a law degree.
Wow, what a journey. And so if I heard you correctly, you are a middle child like me. I'm one of 3 boys. You're one of 3 girls.
I am a middle child, and it's a proper thing, middle child syndrome.
Absolutely.
Because and I think it's what probably the background in me being a litigator probably lies there, because you're fighting up and you're fighting down. So you're constantly in a battle, and diplomacy skills are massively needed. So yeah, it's very interesting that you're also a middle child, because I really do think there's a lot of interesting facts about middle children.
Yeah, and that could be a whole podcast in itself, but I promise today is about you as the middle child. This is your moment.
Don't like this it's about you thing. I always prefer to talk about other people, but go on, crack on.
So you've obviously spent, your career with Mayor Brown. What initially attracted you to the firm way back when?
Right. So I love telling this story because what attracted me to it was then Rowan Moore way back in 1992 was quite simply the light and airiness, coziness and welcomingness of their reception. And I don't want to slag off other law firms, but of course that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I also went for interviews at Allen & Overy, Slaughter and May, Herbert Smith, who were in actually Exchange House, and that was a bit more kind of light and airy and welcoming. But I was, I think probably as a result of my background, completely intimidated by that setting. And I remember going into Allen & Overy's offices in Watling Street at the time, and they were just very intimidating, oak panelled, wingback chairs, and somebody would probably write in and say, no, they weren't. But that's my memory, and I've probably conflated a number of interviews. But I found the whole situation very, very intimidating. I was wearing a bright red suit from River Island. I remember I was so proud of it. Red's my favourite colour. I still always wear red. And one of the people that was interviewing me in one or other firm said, why are you wearing a red suit? I went as bright red as my suit and thought, oh no, this isn't for me. And I'm not familiar in this type of environment. And I just didn't feel comfortable. I was also interviewed almost exclusively by all men, which is fine. I was very comfortable in that environment. I'd worked in my dad's very, very small engineering firm, and all of his customers were men, and I'm very comfortable in that environment. But it was just sort of strange. And when I went to Rowan Moore, I was late. I was really flustered. It was a really, really hot day. I remember it like it was yesterday, rushing down Blackfriars Lane, get into this reception. And it was just like a nice, cozy lounge. And it had normal magazines and papers on, not law reports and crusty old stuff. And there was just this most wonderful woman and I said, I'm so sorry I'm late for this interview. And she said, don't worry, they're running half an hour late. Sit down. I'm going to get you a glass of water and I'm going to tell you all about the people that are interviewing you. And she was just wonderful and warm and kind. And I was interviewed by a woman who I would remain eternally grateful to, Stella Abrahams. She was wonderful. And another partner called Arundel McDougall. And it was a chat. It was warm. And they told me about the firm. At that time, Rowan Moore had more female partners than comparably to any other firm in the city. And that was massive to me. But it was pure gut reaction and feeling when I walked into that reception. I didn't care how big the firm were. I had no idea what Magic Circle was. I really didn't have a clue. And it was a bit shallow, but I'll tell you why it was a bit shallow, because I was always intending to just get them to pay for my law school, which they did, get a bit of money as a trainee, and then I was going to go and save the world and be a criminal lawyer. So that was my plan, but there was no money, so I was always just going to go and just use them for a few years. And yes, it's quite embarrassing because 30 years later, I'm basically still at the same place, although it's now got a different name and it's a bit different in its outlook than it was in those days.
Well, what a story that is, thinking about trusting your gut. You went in, your gut feeling was this felt right. And 30 years on, what a gut feeling that it was, that it's led to and so much success with the firm. Couple of things. We are big fans of red. It's in our color. It's in our branding at the Legally Speaking podcast. And I talk a lot about in my content online about, this, it's no longer B2B, B2C, it's H to H, it's human to human connection in this
absolutely
exemplified technology world. But back then, even then, it was so important for you that, regardless of what was on these websites or these big offices, it's those little touches, being greeted with kindness, treated as a human, treated as, absolutely you deserve to be here. We're not going to judge you on how you look, how you appear, you as a human. And I think that's so important. It's something I advocate for strongly with my mission with this show, to build a more collaborative kind of legal community. So let's dive into, a bit of the present.
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm used to doing podcasts as well, and I just want to say how I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. And it was one of the things that was so important to me when I became office managing partner of the London office, was to maintain that warm, friendly environment. And I would love you to come into our reception. We've got a big hub, and we have the set. I would never have our receptionist in a uniform. I think it's intimidating, and it's all about that warmth and friendliness, and important for clients, but important for recruiting best talent to create that environment. And it's all about human to human contact, which is why I talk so much about how important it is, and collaboration, and all of that is just so important in team building.
I agree. And I always say collaboration is domination from people who can open their mind past looking from the competitive side. And this, again, lends itself to my grandfather, who ran his own law firm in the mid-50s that many of our listeners will know. And he was my sort of reason why I do a lot of the work that I do. Every morning, he would make a point of the founding partner to go and say hello, good morning, to every individual, from the cashier to the receptionist to every single lawyer. Admittedly, he only had 50 people, but that's still a lot of his time every morning dedicated for that personal touch to make you feel welcome, seen and heard. And that goes such a long way, not in terms of just getting the talent, but keeping the talent, because it's very expensive. As I know, as running a legal recruitment business, our fees aren't cheap. And so it's, you don't want to get people in and see them walking out the doors. So I love that you advocate for that. And, it's very clear from everything I've seen and heard and known of you. And that's why I was so excited to have this conversation today. So let's talk a bit more about sort of the present, because as a senior partner in the construction disputes team, what does that role entail? Give us a bit of a sort of day in the life.
Yeah. So my management responsibilities are split with still doing client work. And I wouldn't have been interested in a role in firm management, now global firm management, as opposed to London firm management, if I wasn't also able to work for clients and with my teams and carry on doing my disputes work, because that's my first love. I didn't really know anything about management until the last sort of 5 or 6 years. And so my normal day is, I'm somebody that does get bored easily. And so, one of the most important things for me when I was deciding which team that I really wanted to qualify in and what excited me most was the variety and variation of the work. Now, that might not resonate, to some of your listeners, go, construction law, how boring. And, and it can be. And, I've been known to fascinate people for hours on the subject of concrete and concrete pouring and concrete cracking. But I promise you that I could make that interesting. But what I love about construction and engineering law is the variety, and it's multi-layered, because you have a variety of different clients, from architects who are amazing and brilliant and inspiring to work with, to engineers of all disciplines. And I love engineers. My dad was an engineer. I was just so crap at physics and maths that I could never have done it. But I love the concepts and how they actually make happen and design what architects have created visually and aesthetically. But then I act for contractors as well, who are just the most down-to-earth, fantastic, approachable, call a spade people, really direct, but you just form great relationships with them. It's really knockabout, lots of adjudications, which are quick disputes, which I love because you get to the end of them. But mostly it's about the people. So, it comes back to this theme. And over the years, you form really long-standing, trusting relationships with all of those people on the client level. But also another thing I love, because, I still want to really go and be a criminal barrister, the barrister team. And I'm lucky enough being a team that's very highly regarded, as you kindly mentioned, but which means that we get high value, complex, global construction engineering disputes. So you're working with some absolute super brain, but super nice barristers within your team. And the way that I like to work, which will be no surprise to you, is in a completely team environment. And I think that's one of the things that has set us apart as a construction engineering team, because we always form a team around our clients and we enmesh ourselves, because they have the expertise, they have the knowledge, they very, very often have fabulous in-house counsel themselves. And so we form a team. There's no pomposity, there's no them and us. I've been known to ask barristers to leave our team if they start saying, your case on this point of law is going to be tricky, or your case. No, it's our case. It's us. We are a team. We all work together. And it's that I love in my day-to-day job, It's incredibly hard work. It's long hours. It's really intellectually difficult and challenging. But what I really love about it is the negotiation, trying to find a solution. I love going to court. I love a courtroom drama, but it's actually a failure if you get to court, because you really should know and understand the strengths and merit of your case and the other side's case to try and get the best result for your client. Because in my view, and I have so many examples of this, that it's the long-standing, ongoing client relationship that is so valuable. So for me, it's fantastic if you get a dispute and you resolve it really, really quickly, and you charge the client minimal fees, but they are so happy and they move on with their core business. But then something else comes up, they'll come back to you. And that's the way that I like to work. So that's my sort of day with this huge mix at the moment in the construction world. And again, some people might think, it's dull, but it's in the news so much. We're doing a lot of cladding disputes and a lot of work post Grenfell, which again is really fulfilling and good, because that you're helping to make buildings safe so that horrific tragedy could never happen again. And understanding some of those mechanisms and what goes on within cladding, I promise you, is as interesting as concrete.
Yeah, and I can just hear the passion in your voice, about what you do every day, and it's so refreshing to hear that. And like you, my younger brother's a QS, and I've got a lot of friends that are in the construction world. So, if I haven't heard an NEC or a JTC or something FIDIC or something like that related, people probably quickly Googling away who are not related to construction now. And I think you really pick up a pearl of wisdom that I want to sort of stress to our listeners, because it's super important. And it's contacts are good, but relationships pay. And I think treating people, and building that trust, you'll get that repeat business. You gave them great examples, and you talk about being solutions-based, best outcomes. That's why you've reached the top of your field, because you really do think of, the end goal in mind, and really practice best practice along the way. And you emphasize team. And as Brian Fanzo says, who's a great friend of mine, we is greater than me. And I think people who understand that perspective are going to go very far. So thank you so much for a rock star answer on that.
No, that's an absolute pleasure. And a lot of people say it, and it's not rocket science, but people don't do it. And it's actions, not words. And it's that Alex Ferguson approach to exactly what you said that your dad did. It's remembering the details. It's knowing what their dog's called. It's remembering and understanding. I just came off a call to a client, which was, I was a little bit late joining this. And, he'd had an ill child. And we spent the first 20 minutes just talking about, how things were, completely unrelated, because he's a friend. And, again, it's something that actually a colleague from another law firm said years and years ago to me. Oh, don't make friends at work because it's a professional relationship. And I just thought, that is not possible for me. I cannot do that. You spend so much time at work. You spend so much time working closely with people. You develop a bond and a trust. And, maybe it's sad because maybe I've spent too much time at work. But I would say many, many of my absolutely closest friends are people that I work with, that are clients, certainly barristers who have become amazingly good, loyal, close friends. And I think that's a good thing, not, oh, I've somehow breached some professional, code of ethics. I think that's how you build up trust, by becoming friends and finding out about people's personal situations and getting to know them on a personal level. So that's one of the things that I love so much about this job.
And the word there is care. You genuinely care. And, that through that, you will build that personal relationship. And many of the listeners will know that, my daughter, my 16-month-old daughter at the time was in hospital, and, we spent months there. And so, the support you have from people and understanding, and law firm clients, and actually certain clients were still sort of bombarding me. And at the time I've made decisions to say, well, you're not for me anymore. I want to understand people that, are personal. And I love that approach. So I want to talk about some of your cases. I mean, you've done some incredible cases, but I mentioned in the introduction, one of your notable cases preceded the House of Lords. So could you tell us more about that case and how that all sort of happened?
So that case was really interesting, and I do wonder whether there's going to be some more cases as a result of this sort of recession. So it resulted out of negligent valuation of a building on the sort of edge of what is now Canary Wharf. And we were acting for the insurers. A lot of my cases are acting for insurers. We were acting for the insurers of a valuer who valued this property off plan before it was built, based on what the sale of the flats would be. And they were sued by the bank because the developer, everything just went bust. And so they were sued by the bank, and the bank said that it lent the money on the basis of this negligent valuation. So there was a huge question about whether or not, the valuation was negligent, which it was found that it was, but also what the measure of damages were. And it's a really complex case. And it's one of these that it had to go to the House of Lords in those days, obviously now the Supreme Court, because it impacted so many insurers who were affected by the increase in losses and damages due to the fall in the market due to the recession. So sort of extraneous factors. So it was one where it was actually incredibly civilized. It was, we need to get a judgment on this point of law from the House of Lords. And, what is the basis of the level of damages? Because of the timing and because of the fall in the market, does the, claimant get that increase in value? So that's what the House of Lords case was all about. But for me, the experience, and I'm not overselling it, because I did nothing apart from bundle up the documents and send them to Jonathan Sumption, who I'm sure your listeners will have heard of. And we had a couple of consultations with him, which were just mesmerizing. I mean, he's just such a phenomenally intelligent, incisive guy. And then I just had the absolute pleasure of being able to sit in the back of the House of Lords and just sort of watch this unfold. And it was incredible. They all sort of sit around this massive oval table and present their arguments. And there's some very famous bits in the judgment about, what are these extraneous factors and what should be taken into account and what shouldn't. So that's how it kind of came around. But yeah, absolutely fascinating. And, I loved it. And I've been to the Court of Appeal a couple of times before, but that was the sort of pinnacle, even though, as I say, I didn't do much apart from put the bundles together. But my bundles were okay. And putting together the bundles for the Supreme Court is just a ridiculously painstaking exercise. And it's one of the stories that I do say to junior people, that it's really boring and it's now all done electronically, but you've got to get your bundles right, because it's so embarrassing if you're in court and the judge says, turn to file 5. And it's not there, and you're like, oh no. So yeah, that was great. But going into the House of Lords and spending time there was absolutely fantastic. And it's great that people still refer to that judgment, though it's about 100 pages long and I haven't read it for ages. So don't ask me any questions about it, because I won't know.
Well, what a fascinating story. I love just listening to that. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. And let's carry on with some experiences then, because can you share some of your responsibilities you have serving as the firm's sort of global management committee?
I can indeed, yes. And management is something that, I did come into sort of by accident. I'd never had aspirations to go for management. I loved what I was doing. I loved building the relationships and developing clients. And so what happened was that it was coming up for an election for Senior Partner of London. And so, a few people had said to me, oh, you should go for it. I thought, what? You're mad? Why would I do that? I'd always been very, very interested in recruitment and HR issues and management of our wider litigation team. So that kind of interested me. Anyway, what I thought was there were a couple of other candidates that had put themselves forward, and they were both guys, again, absolutely fine. But I just thought actually that I didn't want to be the person who might criticize a future leader of the office if I wasn't prepared to give it a go. And I had a few people who were supporting me, particularly my great friend and mentor, Michael Regan, who has always kind of guided me and helped and supported me. And he said, you've got to go for it. You've got to go for it. I thought, oh God, no, because I'm so competitive and I'm a litigator and I don't do losing. I can't lose. I literally couldn't even lose a game of Monopoly with my two sisters. That was just never an option. So I thought, if I'm going to go for it, I have to win it. And so I just went all out, and I really sort of and I knew everyone, I'm, as you can probably tell, never shut up. So I knew everyone in the office really anyway. So I did all of that. Sorry, I know I'm not answering your question. And so that was an election, which to me was really important, because it's about feeling that you have the support of everyone behind you, and not that you're appointed. And this is probably the subject of another podcast, but I'm obsessed about people succeeding by merit and not by being appointed because they have to improve diversity statistics. And I am a massive advocate and supporter of women getting into leadership positions, which is why I talk about it so much. And I mentor so many people, and I help and support women and any diverse groups as much as I possibly can. But I still think it's so important that you're there because of the merit of your own abilities, not because, they need to make up some statistic. So that was massive for me that I was elected, and I absolutely loved that role. And then, so I did that to I hope the best of my ability, and I worked incredibly hard. But we grew the office. I'm sure you've seen the lateral partner recruitment that happened in that period at Mayor Brown in London, and it's really become hugely successful office. And as a result of that, I was asked to go on to our global management committee, which is 7 people, the chairman and the global managing partner. And that was really daunting for me because I knew about London, I knew about that, but I didn't really think I knew anything about global management or law firm economics. I knew about budgets. But again, I felt that the trust being put in me, I think, and I hope because I'd done a good job in the London role, was something that I just thought, well, I do have terrible imposter syndrome, but if they believe in me and if they think I can do it, again, with support, mentoring, help from huge amounts of people, but mainly business services, which again, I'm always shouting out because I think they are very underrepresented as a group. I just thought, right, well, I can learn it and I can ask people and I can find out. And again, I'm part of a team. So that's been a really learning experience. And again, I don't like management books. I'd rather read Alex Ferguson's biography than some management book which tells you how, I do love this book called 4,000 Weeks though. Have you read it? It's so good. You must read it. And it's 4,000 weeks is an average lifespan if you live till you're 80, which I've got no chance of doing. But it's about stuff that you don't do rather than stuff you do and not making lists. And it's really interesting. So anyway, I don't think that really answered your question. But management was a new thing for me, and I found it challenging but rewarding. Sometimes things don't happen quickly enough for my liking. And sometimes I felt like I'd kind of make change happen quicker in the London environment than in the global environment. But we're a very conservatively run firm, which I think is a good thing. And I've learned a huge amount, but I'm still learning. And yeah, it's interesting. And that is not like Sue's.
No, it is not. But I think you should give so many good themes that we talk a lot about. And I really try to educate our listeners on about the importance of mentorship. You talked about your mentor and actually how they can not only shortcut a lot of they've probably been down the road and can give you that wisdom, and they can push you out of your comfort zone, because the comfort zone's great, but nothing ever grows there.
And don't reinvent the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel. Ask, has this happened before? What did we do before? How does this work? What do you think? And again, it's a team thing. I'm not given projects to go off on my own and, do this. It's always working in a team, and there's always somebody to ask. And, I'm the person asking the stupidest questions, and I don't care, because I think that's really important, because you're all kind of learning together. So it's rewarding, but it's challenging. It's a lot of travel as well. There's a lot of travel because we started to have in-person meetings, which is great. We just came back from our global partners meeting in Arizona, which is fantastic because it's the first time that's happened for 5 years. And I got to know so many people who I've not met, because you sort of lateral partners particularly coming in. But it's a great experience, and it's so different from my day-to-day job advising on construction engineering disputes. But yeah, I would encourage people to really think about management and leadership, but not by reading management books.
No, absolutely.
Do you agree with that?
I agree. No, because it's great, but nothing beats the realities and the experiences. And I just want to kind of pick up on 2 other things. One is your wit mindset, right? Whatever it takes, and I love that. And we've had a lot of people come on to the show. They've got to where they've got because of that mindset. And you talked a lot about, I have an acronym that I like to give to people about, lose. You never lose. It's life offering some experience. So if by some chance that did happen, you learn from that experience, you move forward, and you press on.
Oh, I like that podcast, How to Fail, because you learn. I've lost cases in the Court of Appeal, and I don't think you are a good litigator unless you've lost a case and you know how it feels. And that really helps and advises you to, think about trying to avoid those pitfalls. So I completely agree. And I think it's funny when people say, I've never lost a case, and think, well, either you've never done one because you've never actually litigated anything. And so you've never kind of taken that risk or got into that situation. But I completely agree with that.
Yeah. And, perfectionism doesn't exist, folks. A person who never made a mistake never existed, and you have to make mistakes to get forward.
Oh, and everything is chaotic. It's I love the chaos. It's just chaotic. You just do your best and stuff happens and stuff gets in the way, but you just kind of keep going and learn from it.
You absolutely do. And that's the thing, keeping going, I think is super important. Having that network and mentors around you definitely helps. So let's talk about your feature in Legal Cheeks article. Female city law firm leaders share words of wisdom on International Women's Day. You outline, asking for help shows a high level of personal confidence that I really admire in people. Seek help from all quarters. Keep your eyes and ears open. You've talked about this, but sort of mentors from your own guidance, advice, assistance, navigating your legal career. How do people maybe at the more junior end go about getting mentors? Time for a short break from the show. How do you fit your entire law firm into your pocket? By using Clio's legal software. That's how. Clio is the solution UK law firms choose to help them work more flexibly wherever they are. Because it works on any device, including a laptop, Mac, or mobile. You can carry Clio with you wherever you go. Record your time, manage documents, send client communications, and even keep colleagues updated when you're on the move. Whether you've got to do the school run, commuting to meet a client, working from home, or the office, or anywhere in between, Clio fits around how you want to work. Want to see how it all works? Check out clio.com/legally speaking. That's CLIO.com/legally speaking. Now back to the show.
So we have a number of things that we do here. And again, I just think multi-layered, multi-leveled approach is really important. So we have a formal system of mentorship, so you can literally go and request a mentorship. But what I like is informal mentoring. And I like pairing people who I think can learn from each other and who I think will get on. So we have a buddy system within our trainee cohort. So they help each other. And so a second year trainee would be helping a first year trainee. But then we try and sort of cross-pollinate that with associates, because I think you are apprehensive and you are nervous when you're coming in to that environment. So if you get paired with some partner, then you're going to perhaps not be as honest about the fact that you think you have got a question about an internal administrative function, like how do I send this to account? How do I get this check for a court fee from account? You don't want to ask some senior partner that, but you would ask another trainee, and you would perhaps have an open discussion about that. So we have a number of things. We have a forum where we encourage people to put forward issues for discussion. They can do that anonymously, or they can do that, personally. And there's just all sorts of different things. But I think mentorship is a really interesting topic, because I think it's a bit like life. At different times, you might require support and mentorship or counseling or advice or assistance for different things. So at different times in your career, when you're thinking perhaps about coming up to promotion to partnership, you want to speak to somebody who went through that process last year. Who was the interview? What did you put in your form? Can you share your form with me? Really interesting stuff. If you're somebody that's coming back from maternity leave, and we really try and do this, we have a really great program of kind of reintroducing people back into the workplace. So again, you might want to talk to somebody that's gone through that can really help and guide you, which is totally different. And then, with trainees that are coming up to the end of their second year, I remember it myself, one of the most stressful times of your career, ironically, because you've got to decide, which group would be your dream group to qualify in. And then you immediately feel like you're narrowing your options.
Yeah.
And I'm having total anxiety because I was going to be a criminal barrister. And, is that great? Is there even a job in that place that you want so we have a lot of focus on people that are coming up to qualification and talking to them and helping them and guiding them and encouraging them to ask those stupid questions. Because sometimes people are thinking about qualifying into a group they haven't sat in. And I think at those pivotal points in your career, which are, what's going on in your family situation, when you're coming up to qualify, if you are or are not, which is absolutely fine, thinking about partnership or a council route or going in-house, secondments, or you might need a different person with a different skill set. A lot of encouraging that I do with our associates is about business development. Some people are really reticent about, I'm rubbish at BD or I've got to just write articles or, write academic things. Okay, there are so many different ways to skin a cat. So you might need somebody to help you from our BD team, from our PR team, from, our knowledge management professionals. At different points in your career, you require different people and different levels of support. And I think if you can articulate that, and if you have good people in your team around you, they will help you. I do it all the time. I try and identify people that lack confidence, say, oh, I don't want to do a presentation. That's fine. I do presentations and I speak to huge amounts of people all the time. I still hate it. I'm an advocate. I did solicitor. I was one of the first people that did solicitor advocates qualification to help give me confidence to present and speak. It's incredibly daunting, and it's boring old trite, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so people need help and support in those kind of skills. And I find that hugely helps people to develop their confidence. So it's so not an easy answer, but I think if people are more open-minded about using and speaking to different people at different times, at different levels, from different disciplines. Some of my best mentoring has come from clients and barristers who can give me that objective view from outside the professional work firm arena. I spoke to a couple of my really close barrister friends to think I should, I don't know about this global management job. Oh, it sounds a bit weird. What do I know about? Is it going to be all Excel spreadsheets and balance sheets? But and great advice that you get from people at different times. Having said that, you can have continual support for people from your own teams that you work closely with who are there through your career progression.
Yeah, and just so much valuable content you shared there. And I want to pick up on that. Firstly, for people with business development, forget the word business development. Remember the word conversation. Every business deal, every relationship starts with a conversation. So think about organizing, orchestrating, starting conversation.
Just go for a coffee. Just have a chat. Talk about suits. Talk about the split. All the stuff that's going on now. There's so many weird and wonderful things happening in the world. We're still banging on about COVID. And, but have a chat, find out the hobbies and interests. It's not a formal thing. You don't have to write some academic 20-page article on what the, Samco decision really meant in the House of Lords. Just be yourself, be authentic, talk about really banal things. I mean, the amount of conversations I have with clients about, I'm a celebrity or Love Island, but another 20-minute diversion on Love Island. You don't have to pretend that all you do is sit around and read the Financial Times and watch Panorama.
Because we're humans, and that's the point here. No, we're human to human connection. It's great that someone in a very senior, who's achieved so much is really promoting that. And you also talk about some other things that, I want to highlight. I talk a lot about 360 mentorship as well. You're talking about people from different dynamics and, up, down, sideways. I'm a big advocate for that because we're drowning in information, people, but we're craving wisdom. Yes. And that wisdom comes from those mentors and people around you.
Well, there's got to be some benefit for getting old, Rob.
And practice means progress. There's no such thing as perfection, so practice will always mean progress. So if you do, feel like, oh, I'm not sure about public speaking, just give it a go. Practice, because next time you'll be better.
In a small way. So again, that's what I'm encouraging people to do in a mediation. Do the introduction, which will be 5 minutes. Have some bullet points. You don't even have to learn them off by heart. And it's a relatively small group of people in an informal setting, and then I would follow up and do the main submission or whatever. Just start small and gain your confidence.
And I remember listening to a podcast myself about someone saying about how people get really overwhelmed with problems and, they see this big issue. And I think somebody said to them, can you see your next step forward? And the individual said, yes, well, take that and start taking small steps to get closer to finding the solution to the problem. And it's a great example, like you said there, break it down. Start with that 5-minute segment. So really good advice.
That's the 4,000 weeks thing as well, which is don't look at your to-do list of a million things and think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to get through it. I can't. Just do the next most important thing. Just do that and you've achieved something. And then make a list of what you've done, the done list. I love that. Today, I had a really great chat with Rob on the podcast, and there's a million things that I haven't done, but I don't care about them.
Exactly. We're having too much fun here. But also make, I always say celebrate your mini wins. If you've done something, it's really good to be your own best cheerleader and really to support yourself and be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself. Absolutely.
You have shared so much in a very short space of time. It's been fantastic. But I want to ask 2 quick final questions before we wrap up.
Yes.
Because we obviously have a lot of next generation of legal talent listening to the show, as well as current legal talent. What are some of the skills, bearing in mind we're in 2023 and the legal, you would have seen tremendous changes in the industry. So I want a real sort of current looking forward answer, if you may. What skills do the next generation of trainees or lawyers need to succeed?
Just going back to basics of what we talked about, be yourself, be human. Don't try and pretend you're something you're not. Be authentic and ask questions. I think that will never go. But I also think what's really interesting about the next generation is the use of AI and the tech, because they get it, and I love that. And I've been taught so much. And one of the things we're talking about in the Arizona conference is ChatGPT, and how is that going to change the way that, we use tech and AI to really think about assisting us and getting rid of some of the bureaucracy and, honing skills. So if you're interested in tech and innovation and you also want a career in the law, I think now going forward is such an interesting time, because I think there are real innovative ways that we can make our lives more efficient and be more efficient in the way we deliver our legal service to clients. So I would say find something that interests you, that's quirky or that's just a bit different. But I know, again, it's really boring, but just be yourself. It's too exhausting trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not and trying to fit into a model of what you think the future, as a trainee or associate needs to look like walking into these firms. It's just pointless. And always find out as much as you can about it. Ask people, listen to your podcast, but stalk people on LinkedIn, see what people are doing. Read all the stuff in the student's guide. Try and find out about the philosophy and the culture of the firm that you're joining. What would I know? I've never worked anywhere else, but I do know that the culture here is just absolutely fantastic and warm and embracing, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't be here, because I think life is too short to be in an environment where you dread coming into the office. So don't put yourself in that situation. Find out as much as you can and ask questions. Same old stuff, but I do think tech and innovation is the future, and I think our next gen of lawyers have got so much to add in that context.
Yeah, and people who know and follow me, I'm a big advocate for tech. We were the first legal podcast to do NFTs. I'm involved in Web3 projects. I believe in AI. And folks, also make sure you understand some of the basics, because AI is great, but machine learning is really what we need to understand. That is working on the actual problems. AI can only actually help with what we already know, that now it cannot predict the future. And I think when it gets to that stage, it's going to be a crazy world. We're not there yet, but it's fascinating to see. I was at the Future Lawyer Week recently, and they were talking about some real changes and how this can really be impactful for the future. So finally, before we let you go, Sally, what advice would you give to those who want to become a senior partner? You talked about this sort of starting your career, being yourself, embracing yourself, but to get to the top of the tree, what would be your advice for those individuals?
That is actually, and I'm not normally lost for words, Rob, as you can tell, but that is actually a really difficult question, because I think if anybody at a junior level had an aspiration to be a senior partner or law firm leader, I'd be deeply suspicious, because I don't think you would start off as an NQ or a junior associate saying, I want to be senior partner. It's something that you can develop along the way, depending on how your career progresses. Now, maybe that's naive, because, there are firms that have non-lawyers on their board and NEDs, etc., which I think is really great and again balances out. But I don't know what advice I would give to somebody if they wanted to be a law firm leader, because I just can't really contemplate, certainly from my own position and experience, being at a junior level, aspiring to that. I think if you'd have asked me when I just qualified, I'd have absolutely panicked and said, I think I better had to go back and be a criminal, do some criminal law.
But what if someone's a senior associate, or maybe they're accounts, or maybe they're they're in there, they're thinking about trying to take those steps up.
Yes. So then show an interest in recruitment massively, and really helping with lateral recruitment, graduate recruitment, and developing talent. Again, I think the key management skills are all about talent, retention, and development, because we don't want to be paying recruiters for massive fees when we've lost through not looking after them our own people. So I think if you show that, I think again, certainly in my own case, if you show that interest in people and the management of people and HR issues, but growth and development and strategy, whatever that means, again, but if you are showing those sorts of skills and you're interested in that will put you in a really good position. And I think probably by accident, because I'm a really nosy Parker, I was interested in that stuff, and I was really particularly interested in developing our internal talent, but also recruiting laterals. And I think that gives you that kind of holistic view of the law firm and where you want to grow in terms of strategic growth and profitability, and our global impact is enormous. So I think showing an interest in those sorts of issues puts you in a really, really good position. But also it does no harm to get to know them. I do lots of things internally where I really encourage people to come and talk to me personally and ask me, and do that. Don't be afraid. So many people start with an apology and they say, Sally, I don't want to bother you, and I had that in Arizona, that, I don't want to bother you. I know you're really busy. No, it's my job. It is my job to help and support people in any way I can to fulfill their best potential, because they're the best people. They're the most profitable people. It's a happy accident. The happiest, most engaged people also tend to be the most successful and therefore the most profitable. So I will always give my time willingly to talk to people and help them and give them advice and encouragement. So don't be afraid. Don't start on day one and send an email to your global chairman saying, perhaps can I have an hour of your time? But make sure you engage when they are doing communications to the firm, ask questions, listen to the internal podcast, and all of those sort of things, and show an interest and make sure people know who you are. I always say that as well. Internal BD is so important. Without shouting and screaming, never be arrogant, ever. I hate that. I hate arrogance and a sense of entitlement, but make yourself known. Help set up something internally that helps with informal mentoring, that helps with, BD initiatives with clients at their level. So many things. I could go on for ages. You're going to shut me up, I can tell.
No, I'm not. I'm listening and just loving it. And I just want to really sort of support everything you just said. Add value. You'll think of creative ways you can add value. And I always talk about this as well. People say, oh, it's I know all these people. It doesn't matter who you know. It's who knows you that counts. Absolutely. That's your reputation. Absolutely. So when you're networking, you want to ensure that it's who knows you. Yes, it's great to know people, but really, if your name doesn't quite land, you need to work harder to get yourself out there to be known. And I love that you dedicate so much time, because that is our greatest commodity. It's the only thing we'll never get back. And the fact that you're willing to do that and people matter to you is no surprise why Mayor Brown has been successful and will continue to be successful on all the great work that you've been doing. And it's a great message for law firms listening as well. Train to retain and keep them happy. If you're going to train, inspire, look after people, put an arm around them when they need it, inspire them. All of that good stuff is great for retention and keeping good people.
Absolutely. It's so important, but also appreciate when that's not great for them from a personal perspective and they're not happy, and then help them fulfill their, what does make them happy. And I've done that a lot with people who perhaps go into different roles, in-house roles, take a different career path, because actually then they come back, you see them, you stay in touch, and they feel like you've helped and supported them when perhaps they've not been in a good place. So that's equally important, but it's not about anything else, Rob. You know that. It's only about the people. no goal, there's no magic, there's no golden book. It's just about people and relationships. And, I love how the best thing about my career, the thing that gives me the most satisfaction is seeing junior people succeed, be better lawyers, be more successful, and go into, really incredible roles and be promoted and fulfill their true potential. That gives me the greatest pleasure. And it's wonderful to see, particularly where people who have lacked confidence gain confidence. It's just the best. It's the best feeling.
Yeah, you get that real intrinsic, value that, you can't put a price on that. It's just, that feeling of, wow, I'm super happy for that. And that's what I say with everyone who's in our community. I'm happy for people. Let's celebrate successes and challenges and support one another as and when. This has been fantastic, Sally. I can't thank you enough for all the wisdom that you have shared. If our listeners, which I'm sure they would like to, know more about your career or Mayor Brown, where can they find out more?
So find me on LinkedIn. And I'm on the website, but I am on LinkedIn. So just please drop me a message, send me a private message. If people have questions, I'm absolutely delighted. If I don't reply, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just overwhelmed sometimes in my inbox with stuff to do. But yeah, I'm really focused on trying to help and support people. And I do that internally. And I hope that's what our people, my colleagues here would say. And I'm very happy to do that, which is why I do such a lot with Legal Cheek and these organizations, because I just think it's so important to always be thinking about how you can help and support others.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% support that. It just leads me to say thank you ever so much, Sally, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you today. I've loved learning more about your journey and all your pearls of wisdom and your candidacy. So,
well, thank you for having me. It's been great. I don't know where the time's gone. I hope I haven't rambled on too much.
No, not at all. And it seems weird me saying wishing you lots of continued success given what you've already achieved, but we absolutely will.
There's lots more. There's plenty more.
Exactly. Yeah. So from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast for now, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.